people here. Look at this. All the ladies are here. You know why?
Why?
Because of you, Tracii Guns. You're like a chick magnet. And I see Debbie, Sandra, and then Deb Jackson. Thank you, girls, for being here. Thank you very much. First question for Tracii.
Oh, look at
How
that.
big of an honor was it for him to get to play with Stefan again on the cruise?
It's always an honor to play with people you love as friends. You know, that's what the ultimate is. You know, you play with friends, people that you know on a human level. And especially, you know, we played, you know, probably 100 gigs together in our life, you know, so. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Family plan.
Xandra used to come see us at the Cat Club.
Wow.
See, it's good to see people in the chat. But Tracii, the real reason why I brought you out of hiding, right? I wanted to get personal. And how do I get personal with Tracii Guns? When it's like a date. You know, as a kid, how do we get along with people? By music or by food.
Right,
liking the same stuff. Well, what the people want to know, Tracii, your top 5 must-have vinyl albums for Tracii Guns. Like the things that made you, Tracii, that influenced you. And that's all going to happen now. And before we go there, everybody watching, subscribe, hit the bell to be reminded. We're going to go back to the 60s, to the 70s. We're going back, bringing it to the future. We'll start now. Okay, so right now, Tracii.
All right, so listen. For me, because I don't really listen to music like other people listen to music, you know, I've been recently assessed with autism and things, and it explains a lot of things about the way my brain works. So there's really 12 records. 6 of them are live, and 6 of them are studio. And these are the instead of doing a part 1 and a part 2, let's just knock these out. Yeah. We could get it out.
We could get it out. And remember, these are the five albums, whatever. As a kid, it doesn't have to be your record, but it could be something you're on too. It doesn't matter. But what made you the guy you are that you love?
Yeah. So let's do, you know, because people probably get more excited about me playing live. So let's just go straight for there's 6 fucking records, man. Starting with The Song Remains the Same by Led Zeppelin. Randy Rhoads tribute record with Ozzy. Aerosmith live bootleg. UFO Strangers in the Night. There's 2 more. Johnny Thunders, LAMF DDK, because it's, you know, and then there's 1 more live. Oh, double live Gonzo. Ted Nugent, that racist fuck. Those records are the most important because those are the ones that was my band, right? Like, you know, since I was like starting at 7 years old, I would stand up and play with live records. And, you know, the most advanced one was the Randy one. And then the most basic one was the Johnny Thunders one. But I learned all that stuff in between, you know, and the Page stuff, that's the stuff that taught me how to jam. You know? Taught me what a theremin was, taught me, you know, you have to play with a bow, you know. That's why I always play with a bow. It's like, if I don't, I know I'm ripping Jimmy Page up, but at the same time, it's like, but that's what you do. You know, my brain's stuck there. It's like, I got to do that. And then the UFO record with Shanker, you know, that was the one that you had to be articulate. You know, I had to play quickly and articulate with feeling, and he was not jamming. He was playing these really party parts, you know, melodies that were heartbreaking and melancholy and things like that. And then obviously the Aerosmith record was the Aerosmith record. It was just the easiest one to, you know, to just like do whatever I wanted over. And so those are super essential to the guitar player I am now. And all those bands had great image, right? And I also got to put in there Frampton Comes Alive, but, you know, I'm just throwing that one out there. But on the other side, you know, it's so easy for me. You know, it's Zeppelin 2, it's Van Halen 1, it's, you know, Diary of a Madman, Gary Moore, Victims of the Future, every Jimi Hendrix record, and Physical Graffiti. You know, those records are so essential to the way that I write music. right? So these ones, that's how I jam. And then the studio records, that's how I write. So, you know, you're going to get that combination of Jimmy Page and Randy Rhoads and a little bit of Van Halen in there and, you know, all that stuff. And I don't listen to anything else. And you probably know that, you know, I kind of listen to the same records over and over and over and over again. There's a couple outliers. Like I really love old garage band rock, you know, stuff like that, kind of obscure stuff. And like Enya and stuff that's like real textural. But I don't have a big record collection. My record collection, like the records I listen to are to my right. There's maybe 40 records, you know, and you know, 30 of those are like two bands.
Okay, so now let's go for number 5. Number 5 to break up from the live. If we can mix this, let's see. We
can mix it. We can mix the
okay.
Well, yeah, definitely.
Okay, I know so if you go from 5 to 1, number 5.
Okay, number 5 is going to be Physical Graffiti.
Okay.
You know, because number 1, it's a double record, and number 2, it has so many aspects of what that band did, you know, from the, you know, Moroccan, you know, Eastern sounds to straight ahead, you know, rock and roll, like, you know, Sick Again and the Wanton Song, and then a lot of open tuning acoustic stuff.
Yes.
You know, so that's a little encyclopedia in itself. So number 5 would definitely be that.
There's a lot of history on that record, Boogie with Stu.
Yeah. Boogie.
Come on, that's killer.
Yeah, you know, cause you know, and I was 12. You know, one of my first girlfriend that I did got me that record. Her name was Debbie, and she was like the only brunette I've ever gone out with and all that. But anyways, she bought me that record and then dumped me. So that record has so much significance in my life as you know, preteen, guitar player, and all the moods that those two records take you through. In the Light, you know, stuff like that. You know? Okay, number 4 has to be The Song Remains the Same, because that's the live double record with all the jams. You know, so you have once again all the different styles, but it would have to be the remastered version with the bonus tracks, right? Like it's got to be that to maximize, you know, what I'm taking on the island with me. So already we have 2 Led Zeppelin records, and I think that would be the only 2 Led Zeppelin records I would need.
That's it.
As important as Zeppelin 2 is to me, having the other 2, I would not need those records.
What's the track on that album you'd pick? Your main track?
I got to go for quantity, you know, and it's a toss-up between Whole Lot of Love and Dazed and Confused, right? I mean, those are the long ones. But I think there's more rockabilly in A Whole Lot of Love. You got a theremin solo and you got the rockabilly medley, as where Dazed and Confused only has the bow solo, and anybody can play the guitar with a bow. So it's like, okay, I know how to do that. I don't need to hear that over and over again. Whole Lot of Love.
Whole Lot of Love going into number 3.
It's just got to be Diary of a Madman. You know, it has to be, because I feel like Randy was fully developed, you know, because Blizzard of Oz album was great. It had Revelation Mother Earth on it, which was a big classical kind of thing. But Diary was darker, more melancholy, a little bit trickier. Took me out of my body more than Blizzard of Oz, right? And then, you know, same with the tribute record. But the tribute record is more of an adrenaline rush than sitting and listening to Randy Rhoads play compositions, right? You know, because Randy is a great little composition guy. And the song Diary of a Madman has been the opening, or the what do you call that? The intro tape for every band I've been in since Brides of Destruction. I started using it then in Brides of Destruction with Nikki and LA Guns every show to this day. That is still our intro tape. So I can't live without that.
Did you hang out and see Randy back in the day as a kid, like see him play? Never, huh?
No, so here's the story. When I was in 10th grade, Slash and I went, that was our first year at Fairfax High School. And he went to see Ozzy play at the Forum. And Randy was a guitar player. I didn't even know Ozzy had a solo band. So Slash comes up to me at first period before we go in, and he goes, I saw your new favorite guitar player last night. And I was like, yeah, whatever, dude. He's like, oh, I'm telling you, dude. I'm like, all right, who's this guy? His name's Randy Rhoads. He's the guy on the side of the Starwood from Quiet Riot. I'm like, yeah, I know that picture. But I couldn't picture who he was. He goes, he played an Explorer, and he played like you, up and down the neck instead of like this. I was like, yeah, whatever, whatever rival guitar player, 14-year-old guy, whatever. I always felt like Slash trying to sabotage me. But anyways, because he talked me out of playing a Les Paul through a Marshall when I was like 13. He's like, everybody plays a Les Paul through a Marshall. It's got to be a BC Rich, through Sun amps and blah. So that's what I did. And anyways, we all know how we both ended up.
That's funny. He tried to talk you out of it, huh?
well, like he was trying to tell me like that's what he was gonna do. I'm not getting a Les Paul. I'm gonna get a BC Rich Mockingbird, and I'm gonna play through a Space Echo, not an Echoplex, and it's gonna go through a Sun amp, not a Marshall. And I was like, oh, I respect you enough to totally like change my point of view and like be open-minded. And so I had all these weird amps and guitars for a long time. And it's always straight back to the Les Paul Marshall. I just can't help it. So he tells me this information, whatever, and I go surfing with my dad that weekend, and Crazy Train comes on the radio, and instantly I knew this is what Slash is talking about. It was so new and different sounding. It didn't sound anything like Van Halen. It was just like, oh man, this is modern. And then the solo came on, and I was like, and my dad looks at me, like, yeah, this guy's pretty good. I'm like, yeah, my life's changing right here in front of your eyes, kind of a thing. So Slash was right. I don't think, I'm obsessed with Jimmy Page in kind of like in a trivial way where, it's about research and it's about, mic placement and, tunings and like all this mythology, where Randy was about his image and, this insane live sound and his, approach to writing rock music, which was different. That's why he's really unique. He wrote from a major key point of view, where the rest of us write pentatonic blues. That's where we start. He started the other way. He started, like, I don't want to say classical because he was not a classically trained guy, but that point of view, instead of A minor, he's playing in C major, writing in C major. It's just how he learned. And Richie Blackmore did the same thing. So, it was a complete rewiring of my brain to ever be able to learn what he was doing and then compose like him. And ultimately I do, now, but it takes fucking years. You know what I mean? It's like, I go from being Ted Nugent Van Halen guy, to, straight out Jimmy Page, Randy Rhoads guy, which is a lot more mature musically without being a muso, right? Like that, there's always that threshold, right? It's like,
yeah,
can't be a fucking muso, can't do it, don't go there, don't fucking do it. You're that guy who's all those bands are named after your dick. You can't be, like, hey, check me out, I'm the guy. You can't do that. But what I learned from all these guys, in particular Johnny Thunders as well, is that your personality needs to come through your instrument. I don't care what you're playing,
Mm-hmm.
And, I want my music to always sound like I'm wearing a black leather jacket. It's as simple as that, That's it. And that's always the thing. So if I'm doing a session for somebody and they want something, oh, can you do it like Satriani, dude? And I was like, hell no, I can't. Because I can't picture Joe wearing a fucking leather jacket, man, and smoking a cigarette outside the Rainbow. I can't do it. But I can picture Jimmy Page on a fucking, little moped kind of bike with a, what do you call it, pea coat on and his hair in his face, smoking a cigarette. I can picture that. So I'm going to do that. That's cool to me. I like that. I can still play fast and I can be nimble and all this stuff, but it has to be greasy. It has to be, Popeye's chicken.
Okay, so we got number 3, Ozzy, Diary of a Madman. Now we're gonna go to number 2.
All right, 100%, because it's absolutely necessary in my guitar playing development, and that's Van Halen 1. Van Halen 1 has to exist no matter what. If I don't listen to it for 5 years, it still has to exist, because there's nothing else like it. There's nothing else that teaches you what that album teaches you as a guitar player, and the great mystery about it is, so many analysts will call that a heavy metal record. It's a blues-based record. It's still blues-based. It's still in the tradition of Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and all those things, and Joe Walsh. It's all those things put together with more distortion. That's all it is.
Yes.
More distortion, a little bit more oomph, a little bit tighter unit as a 3-piece musical band. Mm-hmm. And then you had the new and improved Jim Dandy on lead vocals, man. And David Lee Roth, and he's the guy. He's the man. He's the guy. He's the man. So Van Halen was the template for the bands in the time of L.A. Guns. You know what I mean? It was really the template of guys, Odin, L.A. Guns, even, whatever band Slash was in when we were in junior high school and high school. George Lynch, obviously. But it's a template. Even Pantera's like Van Halen. Poison's like Van Halen. It's the template. It's like, there's a perfect heavy rock band.
Blonde lead singer.
Exactly. They were Zeppelin Part 2, or if you want to look at it that way.
And the thing is, with Dave, he was the ultimate frontman. Back then, nobody could touch Diamond Dave. Nobody. And he took vaudeville. He took it all. He looked like a lion.
Here's a story real quick. I'm in Music Plus on, was it Ventura and Laurel Canyon in 1994. And I just come off tour with LA Guns of the Vicious Circle tour, and someone stole my CD case. The big book where you did 4 CDs of $1 million. Someone stole it the first date in Salt Lake City. So I really didn't have any music for the rest of the tour except whatever other people played. So I'm in this Music Plus. Eddie Van Halen just was recovering from hip surgery, and I hadn't talked to him in about a year. And all of a sudden, Kristen, who Jagger's mom, she's like, hey, Eddie's over there. He's waving at you. And I'm like, turn around. And I was like, oh, man, fucking Eddie. And he was on crutches. And he comes over. I guess Wolfie was about 5. He's still a little guy. And he comes over and he's like, hey, man, what are you doing? I always got to talk like my friends, right? That's what we do. Hey, what are you doing in here? I tell him the story. I go, yeah, all my CDs, got ripped off. Oh man, you get to start over again, right? And I'm like, yeah. What are you gonna get? What's gonna be the first one? What's gonna be the first one, man? I go, I don't know, man. Maybe Van Halen 1. He goes, oh, don't do that to me, man. I know you're gonna get that record, but that's not gonna be your first one. And I go, yeah, you're right. What do you think? What do you think? He goes, let me think about it, for a minute. And we're both thinking about it. And I was over there by the A's, AC/DC, Aerosmith, whatever. And And I had this conversation with him a couple years earlier. But ultimately, he goes, man, you got to get Physical Graffiti. You know, that's got to be the first one. And I knew that I was going to get that one first. But I was really curious to see what he would say. And he said Physical Graffiti. And I'm like, yep, that's the one. You know, so that day, you know, my first new CD after having my whole CD, you know, it was Physical Graffiti and Van Halen 1. And I think I got the Ozzy tribute live record radio. I bought 3 CDs that day. And, you know, I mean, it says a lot about the musicality of somebody that's my music. That's the, you know, I stole all that shit to do what LA Guns does, right? Or whatever I do. But I got to make that decision with Eddie Van Halen, who, you know, the 12-year-old, 13-year-old me is just like, fuck. But, you know, the adult, I play golf with Eddie Van Halen, you know, we talk about chicks, you know, guy, friend, is just like, yeah, man, you're right, dude. High five. You know, what kind of reality is that? A reality that anybody would get to do that? It would be like Stevie Ray Vaughan hanging out with Hendrix. You know?
It's crazy.
It's crazy.
So his number one was Physical Graffiti. So think about that, huh?
Well,
if you had to pick your first record.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we had an earlier conversation about it. One day, we were going to play golf, but there was like some hang up. I was at his house across the way in his studio. And he had, you know, 4 or 5 CDs sitting there. And I always was like spying on his music because I never believed that he actually liked Clapton. Like, that's why this weird, like I think that at some point he decided it was cool to say he liked Clapton in the press. You know, so he just would say that, like, Clapton, yeah, man, I love Clapton. But I could never find a fucking Cream record or a Clapton record or anything like with any of his shit. But when he finally came up to the studio, we're ready to go. I go, hey man, you know, Physical Graffiti, because Physical Graffiti was sitting right there. And he goes, yeah, what would we do without that album? You know, I was like, yeah, you know, right. And that was the whole conversation. He's just like, yeah, man, what would we do without that record, man? Wow, you know, you know, so that translated 2 years later, you know, like, yeah, that's so, I mean, I guess in a way, subconsciously, that if you're in a position, guitar players like us, that, you know, that must have a huge, you know, architecture, a blueprint about it to make you go, oh, I have to have that record, even though, you know, like Yardbirds Live in '69 with Jimmy Page is like, kind of, people don't know that record, but it's like, you know, like there's other stuff too that's just like so critical. But I guess that's just the one, you know, and I bet George Lynch might say the same thing.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
You know what's also interesting about the Van Halen 1 record? We go back, Gene Simmons, he originally, he did a couple of tracks with those guys that he was. I never heard what he did. I never heard any demos. Have you?
It's on YouTube. And you know, the interesting thing about, you know, Gene's involvement, what was Van Halen at that time in terms of a rock band versus a party band, because they were the ultimate party band, right? You know,
they were a cover band originally.
They were a cover band, you know, and so they had that real disco meets, like how LA Guns is Sex Pistols meets Led Zeppelin, let's say. Van Halen was kind of like Casey and the Sunshine Band meets Deep Purple.
Yeah,
right? You know, so they had that real sense of pop music or vocal hooks and what could draw you on, and then you had the evil sound of Eddie Van Halen, and it was just evil. There's no way around it. You know, it's just like, goddamn, no matter how poppy, you know, Dance the Night Away is, you know, it's still,
my God,
it still sounds like Satan playing the guitar. You know, it's just like, wow, Jesus, you know, what the fuck? You know, so like that thing. So you get Gene Simmons involved, who's smart. You know, I mean, that's the thing about Gene. He's a smart musician. He's a very good bass player. and he has a strong sense of what pop music is. And so I think knowing Gene, it was more about laying stake to Van Halen as the discoverer, and like, I know this band is going to do something. I need to get involved now.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that the demos and sounded like they were playing a backyard party, playing, Roller Coaster of Love. It didn't have the weight. It didn't have that thickness of what Ted Templeman was able to get. That sound with the reverb on one side and
totally.
Like that whole, like, Templeman knew exactly what he was doing. To make that band sound like that. And it's interesting because I feel like, just through experience, that if you get a great live sound, you put a record out and you're like, oh, the record sounds like that. And then, but then you go tour your first tour, 150 shows, and you've dialed your live sound in, right? And it's like, fuck. So I think that Eddie really had the experience backwards of, always having his like kind of like thin sound, like Hendrix almost. Templeman making him sound like that. And then he dialed his sound into that record, right?
Very unique sound from the drums to the bass.
Man.
I mean, you go, there's, for the Zeppelin fans, I want my drums to sound like, Bonham. But then you go, the Van Halen, Alex.
Yeah.
He had his own sound, his own tone, and just each guy in that band meant something. It's Michael Anthony's backing vocals, to the sound of the drums, to the tone of the guitars, to the phrasing of David Lee Roth. It was just magical. And Ted knew how to make the perfect soup with these guys.
You really got me now. You got me so I don't know.
That's right. Those components,
that's how I look at it.
Those ingredients are so important, and that's why, there's this kind of weird thing. I've been through it. You played bass in L.A. Guns. You don't want to fuck with the chemistry of a band if the band's successful. But if the band's not quite successful, it's really easy to fuck with that chemistry and get it better and better and better. And like, I've been lucky in that case where I was able to. Band was cool, did some cool records, had some good success. 25 years later, it's like, I know what LA Guns needs. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so that's a unique experience as well, for anybody. But for me, I never thought that, we do as well or better now than we ever did in our biggest Ballad of Jane time, and that comes from learning. That comes from paying attention, and listening to people and taking advice, and sometimes handing the wheel of the ship over to somebody else, saying, hey, I don't trust you, but I have to, and do those things. And I think that, in the case like with Van Halen, or Motley Crue, people keep touting this John Corabi record as the best Motley Crue record. It's not the fucking best Motley Crue record, because that's not Motley Crue.
Not just going to say that.
It's a great record by any stretch of the imagination. It's the most professional sounding record. It's the most Aerosmith-ish, Motley Crue record. But by God, that's not Motley Crue. Vince Neil is the voice of Motley Crue. Mick Mars is the sound of Motley Crue. And Tommy Lee's drumming style is very unique. These components in a band make the sound of a band. Then, if you're lucky enough to have those components and an original chemistry where people actually don't run away from when you're playing, and then you get to have these stories that people love to read about you and your band. That's the trifecta. That's it. That's you got to have the stories. You just can't be good. That's cool. It's great if you're cool. It's great if you're talented. It's great if you have good songs. But if you don't have stories or personality, meh. That's like me driving around in my 56 Chevy pickup truck when I was 16 years old, fucking cranking Atomic Punk, driving around Hollywood. That made me 6 feet tall. You know what I mean? Like, Atomic Punk, Attitude.
All right, now we're getting closer now. We got number one. This is the final number one, the home stretch.
Man. What's that last record?
That makes you cry, that makes you just rock. There has to be that one that's.
So we got Diary, and we've got Van Halen 1. We've got
Physical Graffiti.
Physical Graffiti and the
Song Remains the Same, Diary, and Van Halen 1.
Boy, this is tough. Really tough. You know what? I got to go with UFO Strangers in the Night. It's a double record. It's another flavor. It's still rock. It's still blues-based rock, but it's another flavor. It's a different kind of darkness, and Phil Moggs, different kind of voice. Schenker's kind of half the template for Randy Rhoads in a way. The songwriting style is very LA Guns. It's very Def Leppard 1. It's very LA Guns. Their UFO songwriting style. So I think that I would need that to be able to continue. Like I would need that influence on a desert island to come up with the more simple, straight ahead rockers, because that's what I always felt that Michael was great at then when he was very young. Too Hot to Handle, things like that, with very basic chord progressions, but with that swing and that, the teeth, very somewhere in between, Yardbirds and Ozzy, isn't it? It's like somewhere in there, like, wow, tying old and new together. That's the one guy that like Slash and I both listened to and never talked about, right? It's like Jimmy Page, no, Joe Perry. Jimmy Page, no, Joe Perry. Ted Nugent's cool. No, Joe Perry, no, Jimmy Page, right? Like, so that was always this ongoing conversation in junior high school. But I knew he was listening to Judas Priest, and I didn't like Priest when I was a kid. But I was listening to Def Leppard's first two records and Iron Maiden's first two records. Like, those were kind of my things. That was kind of his things. We were both secretly listening to UFO and Jimi Hendrix. We never talked about those guys. As Hendrixy as we both are, we never talked about it. It's like maybe Hendrix was a given. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, Hendrix is the guy, blah, blah, blah. And then neither one of us at the age, 13, 14, were really ready to start playing anything like Eddie Van Halen's full-on style. So, that's why I always felt like he threw me the detour with Randy Rhoads. Like, hey, man, this is your guy. And in a way, I prefer Randy's playing a little bit to Eddie's, even though, and the only reason I say that is because Eddie did great experimental things, making noise and little cool gimmicks within really, stretching the pentatonic scale and the blues thing, right? And that's kind of where he's a master. The greatest thing in the world, and people don't really realize this, is the pentatonic scale for the listener, because it's only 5 notes. They're all pleasing notes, and in any sequence, they work over a minor chord or a major chord. So Eddie was the master of moving that scale around and doing cool shit. Where Randy, like I said earlier, he came from a major scale point of view, which, people that are a little muso-y, he would play in the relative minor, which gives you 8 notes, and boy, did he know what to do with them, so it was like spicy flavor. And then all of a sudden, like in Steal Away the Night or something, he'd be playing all this cool stuff, or SATO, and all of a sudden he'd be playing like these Chuck Berry riffs. Like, whoa, like, wow, you just went from Richie Blackmore to Chuck Berry in, 1 second. Like, how did you do that? What gives you the right to be that cool? You know what I mean? Which leads to the one night at the Baked Potato, I'm sitting there watching Michael Landau play, and his buddy, and I don't know I never met his buddy. They both had 59 Les Pauls. It was like a Wednesday night. There was 10 people there, and they just wanted to jam. And I think it was during our time. So, what was I, 37 or something? So, about 18, 19 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was really intrigued by the way that they were phrasing. And I've always been big into phrasing. And I understood Randy Rhoads. I understood Jimmy Page I thought. But I realized that certain things I'd try to learn by Jimmy Page, I would get stuck. I'd be like, wait, this is a blues scale, or what are these other notes? No, this can't be right because these notes aren't in the blues scale. They're not in the natural minor scale. They're not. So they played for about an hour, and Lando came down and asked me, he goes, "You want to jam?" I go, not tonight, but I want to talk to you. You know, when you do this, and it sounds like Jimmy Page, what did you just do? And he goes, oh man, he goes, it's so simple. I just switched from major to minor. I'm like, what? You can switch from major to minor? And then he gave me like a 5-minute lesson. And he goes, well, you know, you take the pentatonic notes, they work in major and minor, right? And you just got to practice to know when to go full major, full minor. And it's there. And especially if it's a major chord, you can play a major scale. And I'm like, fuck, right. That's a major chord. You can play a major scale, even though it's a minor key. So Michael Landau really glued it all together for me. That short evening, he really
that is funny.
You know, and that's by the time, you know, you and I got to the Cat Club, I was that guy, right? Like, hey, dude,
Yeah.
You know, I want to beat you up because I don't know why, but you make me uncomfortable. And, you know, why is my girlfriend looking at you? It's because I know how to switch from minor to major, bro. You know, and it's such, that way of thinking is really a studio guy's way of thinking, right? Because they get charts, you know, and not necessarily that all studio guitarists can read music, but they simply, you know, they certainly can see a chart where it says minor chord, major chord, major chord, minor, major, you know what I mean? And how lead guitar started in a rock and roll way, the rockabilly guys would play the notes of the chords.
Yeah.
I was like, so, you know, guys Landau's age, I guess he's, you know, about 10 years older than me. He's more influenced by rockabilly than I am, even to this day. And so if you kind of start out like that, we all know that's where Jimmy Page started out and Jeff Beck. That of course they switched from major to minor because that's how they learned. See, I didn't know until I was, you know, 36 years old, 37 years old. Like, oh, you can fucking do that. You can play the notes of the chords. What? You know, like, it's like somebody forgot to tell me when I was in Guitar 101. You know what I mean? Like just no one ever told me. I didn't know. You know,
the baked potato, you learned that moment. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, that was the defining thing. And to this day, when I do occasionally give lessons to people that are getting there, you know, that are like, you know, better than advanced, you know, like they're playing some heavy blues and writing and stuff like that. I go, hey man, you want to know the trick? You know, and I tell people that trick, which isn't a trick at all, but I mean, it's something that's looked over, I think.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you know, in the way that I describe it, and you're going to love this, 10 guitar players get up at the baked potato. They're all good. And then there's the one guy that throws in the fucking major scale in the middle of the solo, and everybody's like, whoa, what did you do? Oh, because there's always one guy that was that good, right? Yeah. There's always one guy that showed up that nobody knew. You're like, God damn it. What did he just fucking do?
It was a hidden. So do you think it was a hidden secret? Do you think you and Slash growing up as kids, hey man, Randy's your guy, this hidden secret about UFO? Because nobody would mention them. Maybe.
No.
Was it, overlooked. I don't want to share UFO with Tracii or vice versa because I'm keeping the secret spice for me.
I think so. You know, and it goes along with Dave Murray too from Maiden, you know.
And even if you look at the bass player, Pete Way, which Nikki Sixx took that look, and then you got Steve Harris from Maiden. If you look at
it's Pete Way. They're all Pete Way.
All Pete Way. But nobody credits Pete. You always hear the James Jameson's of the list, but you never hear about Pete Way getting
it. And Pete, you know, such like, you know, like Phil Lewis, you know, he grew up with Pete Way. And so I feel like people on the East Coast and people in England and certainly Germany really, you know, hail UFO as a major influence, like especially Def Leppard and a lot of the new wave of British metal bands. Of course, you know, the Scorpions, they're brothers, but still, I feel that UFO is really the precursor to the pop sound of the Scorpions. Because to me, the Scorpions' early stuff, which is the stuff I kind of gravitate towards more, not as popular, but the later stuff from Animal Magnetism on certainly has the pop sensibility of UFO.
We got the top 5 with Tracii, UFO, and if it wasn't for UFO, Tracii and I here to say Nikki Sixx would not have the striped pants that he wore in Theater in Pain.
Right.
Steve Harris wouldn't have the galloping bass lines if it wasn't for Pete.
It's
Right?
Yeah,
and then
we're all
Tracii, you got some of that secret sauce that you and Slash both have, but you wouldn't share with each other because you're trying to hide the secret from each other because you could put it in your solos that you do today.
Really quick, a drop in there. I know that he was listening to Priest while I was listening to Maiden. So like maybe a little bit of his metal sense comes more from Priest, as where mine might come more from Maiden. So that's a little.
That's what separates you guys.
Maybe.
Top 5 with Tracii. Tracii, it was great to have you here, man.
I love you, buddy.
I love you too. Isn't this better than getting the question that who is Jane?
It's not Jane Mansfield. It's the Jane Doe pictures at all the restaurants around Hollywood. Like, what is Jane? What happened to Jane? Like, it's an unknown person.
Is that what it is? Is it Jane Doe?
Mm-hmm. That's the truth.
You just saved my marriage because my wife, can I tell you something? Yeah. While I was there on the Kiss Cruise, do you know how many videos had a video of you guys playing Jane for her? And she was kidding. She loves the Ballad of Jane, and I have so many different videos. So if you ever doing a video for that song, I'll send you everything I got. I got every different angle. So wait, you guys are playing New Year's Eve, right?
At the Whiskey.
That's cool. That'd be
really we got a bunch of shows in December. And then I'm also going back to Denmark in December, so that's going to be a crazy month for me.
So we'll put the links down below for you guys. And then how about new music down the road? What's going on? Anything?
Yeah, the L.A. Guns record's done. It's called Black Diamonds. It comes out in April. It's the greatest record I've ever done in my life. And I'm not kidding. And then at the same time I was writing and recording that, I wrote and recorded an album for Todd Kearns, which he wrote the lyrics and completed. Both of those albums are done. That's called Blackbird Angels, and that comes out in September. So I'm done recording for now.
Tracii, I love you. Thank you for being here, man. Always good, all righty?
Fuck it, I'll talk to you soon.
Everybody, this is my man, Tracii Guns. Links for him will be down below. Follow him on Linktree. Otherwise, everybody, we're out of here. I'll see you all later. Remember, who loves you, baby? We do. And out of here, kid.